Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about Tidus from Final Fantasy X, and then since what I find so fascinating about him as a main Final Fantasy protagonist, and I think I've talked about this a little bit in other videos, but it's just also just because of how he's portrayed compared to, like, you know, and once again, I'm not well versed in every Final Fantasy, but amongst the Final Fantasies I've ever played, he's a very different character in comparison to some. Like, I'd say the character I'm probably closely comparing to, and I'm sure people will be like, don't compare them, it's like Zidane, which I'm always going to pronounce, because for growing up I always said Zidane. That was, but it's like Zidane. It's like probably like I think the proper pronunciation. I don't know, but you know, because Zidane's kind of got like that kind of he can be serious, but he's also got this very like aloof kind of quirkiness to him that Tidus kind of shares a little bit, because Tidus can come off looking like an idiot. I don't know what, I'm also curious, is that just something from the direction of, I mean, I'm assuming it's in the Japanese as well, because I've never actually like listened to like just how like the difference in the like the Japanese and the English, because like, you know, some of that translation, some of that might not necessarily translate, but just from the game itself, like not just into the voice acting, but maybe like, I don't know, I assume it's that in itself wasn't lost in translation, that's still kind of maintained, like kind of like he is kind of an idiot. But like I said, I think I've talked about it before, but it's like I find him fascinating because he's not a warrior. Like, remember Orin giving him the long sword at the beginning of Innuendo, giving him the long sword in Xanarkand in the opening, and like him struggling to pick it up because it's like he's not a warrior, he's not a fighter, he's a sports player, you know. It's just like, oh, I'm an athlete doesn't mean I'm ready to fight monsters. So that's why when he's swinging the sword at first he falls back and everything. It's like, oh, because it's like, you know, he jumps on it so quickly because you make the argument maybe his athleticism allows him to quickly get adjusted to fighting. But like you compare it to, like, you know, just pulling from the ones you know, it's like Cloud. Well, to be fair, Cloud wasn't always the cool badass that he is. I mean, granted, he's kind of a dork in some regards, but you know, it's because of, you know, being a soldier and everything, and you know what happened to him. Squall goes to a school where they train people to fight. Zaiden's a thief. He kicks it with a group of bandits, so you know it comes from that as well. You get someone like Vaughn. Vaughn's kind of in the same boat, but I guess it's also like you kind of grow up on the streets. Obviously, you deal with like sewer rats and stuff like that, and then you have like Lightning, who is like, well, she's a trained soldier as well. And then you have Noctis, who is a prince, but he's going through his own training because you kind of need to learn how to fight as a prince, and especially in the Lucius, you know, family line. So it's like it puts Tidus in this very interesting light, like at least amongst the main protagonists. Obviously, like you can venture out and be like, oh, because obviously like the roster of Final Fantasy games can also include other wacky characters that aren't like well-trained soldiers as well, but it's just, it puts a very interesting spotlight on him. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's just like, I've talked about this before. I was watching a while back, I'd watched the Super Best Friends play, and I guess like growing up, because I was like 9, maybe 10 when Final Fantasy X originally came out, so obviously I've talked about it. There's certain things I didn't realize until I watched other people play. I'm like, oh, I'm older now, realizing things I never would have understood. Like, I would have never thought of Tidus in that same way when I was younger. I was just like, oh, like it never would have crossed my mind to think like, oh, like comparing, contrasting him to other protagonists, you know. So I just think it's such a fascinating thing that he is this athlete. He is like, you know, his whole thing is just being a sports player, a blitzball player. So it, like, of course he's not this well-trained warrior, but like I said, he can come off a little bit of an idiot, but it also comes from, you know, him being kind of very, you know, having his own family issues, which obviously family issues isn't something new to the Final Fantasy games. There are plenty of protagonists who have their own family issues, not just, you know, the main protagonist, but even other characters amongst the rosters. But there's also this element of, you know, it's a fish out of water story where it's like he's coming into a world, you know, of spirit where he doesn't understand. He's like, I'm just trying to get back to Xanarkand, the sin thing. I don't understand what's going on. So it's also comes from that perspective, because I'm sure for a lot of people it's like, oh, it's the toxins, right? Oh, because it's like, you sound like an idiot. It's like, you know, but also, like I said, I don't know whether that portrayal, it seems like it's just baked into the game. It doesn't seem like that's a translation thing where like they kind of leaned into it. It seems like I think they made a point to, because I guess that's also supposed to be the thing of like, I'm not the smartest person, you know, but it's like, you know, I think it's like I said, I think he's supposed to be kind of a jock, which is, like I said, it's just such an interesting element, but I think that's kind of the caricature that they were trying to go for with Tidus, and making him like, oh yeah, like I know sports, I know blitzball, like I don't know this other complicated stuff, you know. I just thought that was such a fascinating thing. You know, this is most likely me just reading too much into it, but I just, looking back on it now, just like I said, just comparing him, just amongst the Final Fantasies I've played, just comparing him to other like main protagonists, it just shows you like how different he is, and just like, you know, like I said, he's kind of got that little bit of that aloof personality. He's kind of like that archetype of kind of like your good-natured, good-hearted idiot type of protagonist. Where, you know, obviously you can compare it to like Sora, or, you know, obviously in anime wise, like Goku or Luffy. Like he's a particular archetype that I feel like doesn't unnecessarily match up with like other main like Final Fantasy, whether it be, like I said, your Squalls, your Clouds, your Zidans, your Lightnings, your Noctises, your Bonds, or Ash, or Balthier, if you want to. Maybe there's a little more lane between, more connection between Zidane, Tidus, and Vaughn. Maybe you can make some contrasts that are a little closer in comparison. Regardless, like I said, this video is just me kind of talking about it because, you know, I've talked about it before. Final Fantasy X is my favorite Final Fantasy, so like I'm always ready to talk about Final Fantasy X, you know? As I like to say, these are just my thoughts about Tidus. I'd like to get to know yours in the comments down below. What do you think about him as a character? Some of the points I brought up, do you like that about him? Do you dislike, you know? Because I'm sure, like, for some people, it's like, that's not the protagonist I want to get behind. But also, like I said, it's like, yeah, he can be a little aloof, kind of a little, you know, come off a bit of an idiot, but he's also very good-hearted and good-natured and always wanting to do the right thing. Like, you know, even though he's like doesn't fit into this world, he still wants to find his place in it, especially when he thinks, oh, I can't go home anymore. Spirit is where I belong now. Got to make the most of it and, you know, stick with this group that's become like this new family for him, considering he has, you know, the complicated relationship he has with his dad, losing his mom and everything. But yeah, that's really all I want to talk about in this video. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.